Ledger is a writing podcast and hopefully the inciting incident for your time spent at the keyboard. I'm your host, Austin Wilson. Welcome to today's show where I chat with Carolyn Carpenter. She's a co-founder of Hollywood Gatekeepers. She's also a story analyst, a writer, a producer, and a reader, which is how I met her. You can think of this show as another entry in my Hey, Austin went to a film festival series, because that's where I met Carolyn. There's a panel held specifically for readers at the film festival. And if this is your first time here, it was the Austin Film Festival, which I've read scripts for 2 years now. Carolyn has a ton of industry experience as a reader and a writer, and has worked as a story analyst and reader on so many movies. I seriously can't name all of them, but they include films like Black Swan, Zodiac, Footloose, Nixon and Kissinger, and just a ton more. So she stopped by to talk about what they do at Hollywood Gatekeepers, which they actually are there to help kick down the gates and welcome people in. They offer script reading services and do a lot of awesome stuff. So we chat about that. We also talk about how you can avoid the saggy middle in your screenplay, which is a super common experience for writers. But also we talk about how you don't have to know people to write screenplays and to get them into people's hands, but how you get to know people. It's a super important distinction, one that I'm real passionate about. And obviously it's awesome to meet people, so you should do that as much as you can. We also go into avoiding the fear of failure and the fear of success that comes along with imposter syndrome. How do you co-write a screenplay? How do you rewrite a screenplay? And how do you use the tools that you have if you're a screenplay reader while writing, but not stalling your way forward through self-editing? And also, when someone asks you, what else do you have? Usually it's going to be a producer. You want to have an answer for that. But one of the big questions is what do you do if you feel like you're right on the precipice of making a huge step forward with your writing life? We talk about that. Carolyn has a bunch of awesome answers and advice. As for now, go to mosshartbooks.com, mosshartbooks on Instagram, go to austinrwilson.com to check out my stuff and share this. Tell other people who are script readers or script writers or who want to do one or both of those things. I think there's a lot of stuff in here that's going to help them get where they want to go. And seriously, have them see if they want to be a reader at a film festival. I'm going to be doing it again next year, my third year reading for the Austin Film Festival, and it really did just change my life and my relationship with my own writing, and it's seriously been such an amazing experience. So if you know someone who wants to do it, or you know someone that you think would want to do it, tell them. See if they can reach out to a film festival and start reading scripts for them. As for now, here is my chat with Carolyn Carpenter. So reading, script reading, the thing that how I met you even at Austin Film Festival, listeners know I've mentioned it before. But let's talk about what reading even is before we get into because it's not just like, oh, hey, I read a script, that was fun. Like, there's a purpose, there's a direction, and what you guys do at Hollywood Gatekeepers and even just what readers do in general is not necessarily known to everyone. So kind of talk me through your perspective on what script reading is, and then we'll get into how it ties in with writing. So what's script reading?
It's funny because I often say reading. Yes, it's a thing. It's a
Right.
thing. There is script reading. That is a thing. I even go to elementary school sometimes to speak to kids to let them know that there's careers out there that have to do with reading fun things, to try to help them to be inspired to read, that you could read movies. And I show them what a script looks like, whatever. It's really fun. Because most people, like the general population, for sure doesn't know that there's people out there reading screenplays. But a lot of times I had someone that went through my course that, I mean, she had quite a background. She had a screenwriting podcast, I think, and she had done all of these things, and she had never heard of readers. And it was really interesting to me because she was in the industry. I'm like, with that background, and now she's totally gone through all my courses, and she's graduated, and she's totally in. But she said, she was doing kind of more production, industrials and that kind of thing. So there's less of it. There's still even readers for that kind of stuff, but she just never encountered it, which is really interesting. But it's definitely a thing. And it's definitely, when we first started Hollywood Gatekeepers, it's an online business teaching people how to read and analyze screenplays. That's the main thing that we do. We're not branching out to other things, but that's what we started with. And that's what we do. And so when we first started, everybody was like, this is a total scam.
You're paying to read.
You're reading, you're Hollywood, you're online. I was like, I get it. Run for the hills. And so I just started everything. It's like, I promise you, it's not a scam. It's an actual thing, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So yeah, it's such a cornerstone of the process. It is so very important, and that's why I'm super passionate about Hollywood Gatekeepers, because we're singing from the rooftops that we need to train people how to do this. So many people learned how to do it on the fly by trial and error as interns, whatever. And so I'm kind of taking on the helm to say, no, there is an actual way that you can do this that will not only uplift the writer and inspire them to write, but be such a support system for a producer that just simply doesn't have time to read every page of everything. If a reader reads every page, they're really going to help that writer, and they're going to help the producer really understand what the project is, as opposed to like, well, it didn't quite hit, in the first 10 pages. No, we want people to read the whole thing and then go to the producer and say, here's the hidden gem. Here's the things that are great about it. It needs this, that, or this, that, So it's, I mean, you've read a lot of scripts. So it is that
Yes.
idea. And, that people understand that this is part of the process. It's just, I'm really passionate about getting the word out about that.
So when somebody sits down to read a script and they're not doing it because they're like, I'm going to have some fun right now, but they're sitting down with a purpose to read a script, let's sort of like bullet point, like, what are they looking for? If you have somebody, you're like, okay, you're a script reader, what are you sitting down to do?
Well, have fun.
First and foremost,
fun. It's
yes.
still fun.
It is still fun.
It's for work, it is, and that's the joy of it, right? That's
right.
the beauty of it. And I get a lot of people that say, "Oh, you must read a lot. You read a lot of bad scripts," and that's how they always sound to me. It's like, "Boo," because
right.
I never look at it like that. I don't feel like I read a lot of bad scripts. I read a lot of scripts where people just they don't know what they don't know yet.
Yep.
So, but there is that idea that you hate everything, and you're the kind of reader that, oh, it's all it's all junk out there, and it's all bad. Then to me, you're not being curious enough. You're not sitting down with curiosity thinking, okay, I'm going to find out what's the hidden gem, like I said, in this script. And so we teach that in our programs very, very strongly, that you're looking for some kind of hidden thing in that script, whether the script is a complete mess in terms of formatting or whatever. Every writer, if a writer can get to fade to black, we have a responsibility to sit down and read every page. And so that's what we're looking for, is like, what inspired that writer to sit there every day? There are literally millions of people. There's like 3 million people on Facebook that I've identified themselves as having an interest in writing a screenplay.
Yeah.
And that's just the people on Facebook, right? And yet there's like, I don't know, 10,000 entries or so into the Austin Film Festival, which you think is a lot until you compare it to the 3 million people that say they want to write a screenplay. And I talk to people every day, and you probably hear it too. They know that you're involved in this, and they go, oh, I have a screenplay idea, or I have a screenplay you can write, right? So we want to honor that person that actually does it, that actually sits down. That is a very, very small percentage of the people that say they want to do it, and they sit down and they write that whole thing. And it's our responsibility to find out why. What prompted them to sit there every single day to get them to fade to black? What made them stay there? Even if the screenplay doesn't quite work, even if the ending's terrible, even if there's a ton of subplots, even that there's a lot too much going on or not enough or whatever, there's a reason why that person sat there. And so as a reader, we have many, many tools we can use, many, many things we can look for, all the things we can look for. There's lists and lists of things you can look for. But the primary thing to me is it universal, meaning, not is it vague, but can we understand the human condition in it? And is it authentic? Does it ring true to you? Does it speak to someone? It might not even speak to you, especially if it doesn't speak to you like wholeheartedly and you hate it. To me, if you hate a screenplay because it's not speaking to you, perhaps that means it's strongly speaking to not you, to someone else.
Someone else,
so
yeah.
Can we look at those different aspects to really get to what made that writer write that screenplay? To me, that's the very first thing. And that's what underlies everything as you look.
So now the connection between reading and writing, because my show focused on writing,
yeah,
but like us as readers are also writers.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to talk about the relationship between reading scripts and writing scripts, and start out with asking, how long have you been reading scripts?
Very long time.
A long time.
Yes, decades. I've read over 11,000 scripts. So I've read a lot of, which, I've been doing this because someone asked me one time and I started doing the math, and that's kind of what I came up with. But as I talk about it more and more, I think it's actually quite a bit more than
It's
that. But
probably
it,
more
it
than
adds
that.
up quickly, right?
So you've read over 11,000 scripts. We'll average and say
Yeah,
like
we'll average
15,000,
that's enough,
whatever,
right?
somewhere between there.
Somewhere. So I've read a few, just a few.
So how many scripts have you written?
I've written, that's a good question too. I've probably about 10, 10 full lengths, and then many, many plays, many, many short plays. I'm really involved in theater as well. I just write. I write.
Right.
Write.
So is there any way for you to guess, or maybe even know, how many drafts you've done?
Oh, well, those are 10 completed screenplays by
Completed ones.
just me. So, and then I've had like, I think I have 4 with one partner. I'm working on a second. And then I have 2 other writing partners. We're on our first, and then another one, we're on our second. Yeah, just the 10 are just me by myself. Because I collaborate a lot. And then as a reader working in development, I countless, I don't even know how many rewrites and development. You work in development, and then they would say like, okay, they bring one writer in, I would read, give notes, and then they bring a different writer in, I would read, give notes, and so on and so on, until so many writers, they'd finally say, oh, you're the only one that's been there from the beginning. Why don't you do a draft, kind of thing. So I did a lot of that. I have never been asked that before.
Do you think you were a reader before you were a writer? Or is there not a way to differentiate?
I was definitely a writer before I was a reader. I was like
Yeah.
many, many people that come into my programs, in that I've been writing. I have a picture of myself when I'm like about 8 years old. I'm sitting on a couch and I'm covered in stuffed animals, and I have a pen in each hand. And I'm like, I've been a writer from day one, right? I've always wanted to have a voice and tell my story. That's always been my thing. So I think I wrote my first screenplay in junior high. Like, it wasn't really a screenplay, but my first official screenplay I wrote. Actually, I had been a dancer, professional dancer, and I danced for years and years, and then I got in a car accident and I couldn't dance anymore. And so I was like trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And so I thought, I've always wanted to try this. I'm going to sit down and write a screenplay. So I wrote my first official, went and got books, learned how to do it right, and wrote a screenplay and entered it into a contest, which is what I recommend everyone to do. Well, first, all writers need to read screenplays, as you talked about earlier. The reading and writing connection is so very important. And like you said, I really want to stress that all readers are writers. Sometimes you'll see posts where people will say like, oh, well, you can't be a reader unless you've written a screenplay, or you can't be a reader unless you've won an Oscar. I've even seen that. And it's like, no. That's like telling a vocal coach that they have to be a pop star before they can help someone, with their vocal range. So it's not that. You have a very specific job as a reader that's different than when you write a screenplay, but they're very intertwined. So I'm constantly getting my readers to identify themselves as writers. And so, but many, many writers don't realize that their script is first getting past a reader. So if you can read screenplays, a lot of screenplays, and also, even if you're not planning to be a reader per se, that what a reader looks for, the reader is the first person you have to get past. So having a script, what we call reader ready, that can get past that reader, is really going to help you. And so I went to a conference, and I entered a script into a contest, and it was a finalist. And so I got a ticket to a conference as this thing. So I was super excited. I'd never done anything. And I went to this conference, and at the conference, they were talking about being a reader. What is a reader? They were talking about getting your script past a reader. And then I was like, wait a minute, what is this thing? What is this thing of which you speak that sounds so amazing? So I was like, what is this? And then they explained it, what a reader is. And then that was it. I was totally sold. I literally went out on the break and made business cards and came back and handed them out. Like, I'm a reader. I was like, because I knew that's what I wanted to do. I was like, I've been looking for things after getting in that car accident. And then it just spoke to me. So yeah, definitely though, I'd gone down, I was already reading scripts just to learn. And so to get paid to do that was just like, oh, okay, yeah, here we go.
It's the dream, or at least mine. I mean, not everyone has that dream, but I understand it. I get it.
I know you get it.
Well, so that you said something in there that really jumped out at me, because I'm a reader, I'm a writer, and that thing, reader ready, you have to get your script past a reader.
Yeah.
So one of my big questions is, as readers, and kind of just as a person who appreciates, story and is looking for certain things, structure and those kinds of things.
Right.
As we're writing, how do we avoid being that reader too early for our own thing? how do we avoid using the mechanism we have to stifle what we're doing as we're writing? So how do we employ the thing we have, but at the right time and not too early?
I think I think trying to not do something is very difficult. Like
Right.
trying to turn something off like
Yeah.
that. Instead, it's kind of a mindset thing in a way of just knowing that it's there, embracing it, and accepting it, and move on, and let it be along for the ride, as opposed to trying to shut it off. And then the other piece to that, though, kind of one of the bigger things I think is that when you've written 10 pages and you sit down to keep going, start at page 11 instead of reading what you have so far and then moving forward, because that's where the reader will come in, and you'll spend months and months editing your first act, and then it's like, and you're not moving forward in a way that's more fluid. I don't know. I mean, that's what I say to anyone who's officially a reader and reads a lot of screenplay and does a lot of screenplays and does a lot of coverage. If you're someone that just reads screenplays and you're writing, I don't think that really matters so much. Or if you're a writer and you find that that's what you're doing, that every time you sit down you rewrite those first 10 pages, then it's a matter of training yourself and just kind of handling your mindset so that you can sit down and just move forward, or follow an outline, or do something that will get you moving forward. I find that as I'm beginning to start to teach people how to write their screenplays and get them off the ground and that kind of thing. And that's the main thing that I'm discovering from writers, is that they don't finish. And I think that's a big culprit of it, is that they sit down, they rewrite, they sit down, they rewrite, instead of being like, no, I'm on page 50 right now. And usually the midpoint right around there is where they really fall off. So can I just pick up, even if it's terrible, just keep going, so that you can kind of keep moving forward. I think that's one of the best ways to conquer your reading mind, that, and just give it lots of love. Give your reading mind a lot of love and be like, okay, we're here to write now today. We're here to talk yourself to. I'm also a
Calm
life
down.
coach.
We're here to write.
I
That's good advice.
Yes, we're here. Just remind yourself, put little post-its around that says we're writing today, so that it's like you're just really sitting down to write, not to analyze. It's a different creative process. So tap
Well,
into that.
you mentioned something in that answer as well that lines up with one of the handout you gave out to us at the film festival, which I have.
Nice. I'm queen of the handouts for sure.
And trust me, I read through the whole thing, and I have new phrases now because I didn't know. I wouldn't have said snaking the pages when you're changing the size of the margins or the font, and now I will say that.
Nice.
And I'll cite you.
Just know that that's not out in the industry. That's just me making stuff up, trying to make things up to give my readers, as I train them, easy ways to remember different things that we look for.
Well, I think it's a good one. I mean, that stuck with me immediately, and then so did saggy middle.
Saggy.
And that lines up with what you just said, and a problem I struggled with for years, and it's not unique. A lot of writers struggle with finishing.
For sure.
And arriving at the middle, and the saggy middle being one of the biggest challenges. As a reader, come across them a lot. And as a writer, it's definitely sort of a big challenge. So let's dive into your process.
Topics. This is one of my favorites, because I'm also a life coach. I'm a certified life coach, which I went and got certified as a life coach. So I'm like primarily for this kind of thing. So it's like, so that I can help writers and readers with readers to identify and help other writers. So like my readers are almost coaches in a way themselves, as I teach them how to do this. But the idea that, and this is kind of true with anything, when you start something new, so we'll use screenplays because that's what we're talking about here. But when you start a new screenplay, you're all excited, you've got your idea and you get going. And so any new project is really fun. And it's really interesting because we're launching, actually, I'm so excited. We're launching this new program in January, and we are teaching people how to write a screenplay in 90 days. Because a screenplay, as you know, is 1 minute per page. So if you just write a page a day for 90 days, you have a 90-minute screenplay. Boom, done. Boom, shaka. So
it's a good idea.
That screenplay, right? So as a life coach, though, I give everyone a journal too, and in that journal, I have prompts that tell you exactly what should be happening in your screenplay on page 1, page 2, all the way through. And then what's going to happen on your writer's journey on day 1, day 2, day 3, all the way through. Because when we get to page 45, a beautiful thing happens. The screenplay completely falls apart often. And
Yep.
one of the things that happens is this is where the midpoint is where there's some significant shift. So that should be falling apart to some degree. This is like the protagonist is going through something. There's a shift in whatever's happening. But the same thing happens for that writer. Day 45 or right in the middle of a screenplay is when people start to something else suddenly prompts them. You know what? I want to write that series I've been thinking about. Or, maybe I'll go do that pilot. Or maybe I'm going to write a play. Like they start to abandon because that's where it's gotten hard. I call it the river of misery. So we're like suddenly everything's we were climbing, and then it was like so much fun, and then all of a sudden we start tripping, and then pretty soon we're falling, and then we're drowning, and we're trying to like build this little bridge across the river of misery so that people can keep going. That's what I mean by just that keep going, and learning to manage your mind and learning to recognize that when your brain starts saying I'm going to go do something else, it's a form of writer's block in a way, and it's a way of not pushing through the hard thing. And this is true when we learn anything new, when we're trying a new project, when we get a new job. It's all fun and games. They talk about the honeymoon period of so many things. It's true in a marriage when everything's the honeymoon and the wedding and everything, and then you get to life and you have to like push your way through. But once you get past that, the saggy middle or the that midpoint, then just like in a screenplay, you're hitting that point of no return and you're like, here we go. And now you're like, you get more momentum again. And the really interesting thing that happens through all of this is as you get that momentum, you start, then you're just like your protagonist starts to go, okay, I'm in, like, this is it. I'm in, I'm going to finish whatever come what may, and the higher the stakes, the better in a script, right? So that protagonist is often life and death. I'm going to push this all the way through. And then you get to that lovely resolution and you've climbed your mountain again. And the beautiful thing with the screenplay is, okay, now you've got that first draft. Now you're kind of back to the beginning of, okay, here we go. I'm going to rewrite, blah, blah, and then you're going to hit the river of misery again. And it's going to be like, this is terrible. And this process continues to happen. And so as you finish, when you start to recognize that this is just a pattern, this is just a common thing, when you get there with your next screenplay, it's going to be so much easier as you recognize that, oh, here I am. I'm in the river of misery with my saggy middle, and I'm not going to leave. I'm going to push on through, and I'm going to get to the next, point of no return. And if we can start like mapping out anything in our lives, our relationships, everything that we're doing with that kind of structure, then we can push through things that are difficult in our lives, that are difficult in the screenplay. We can give protagonists more authentic struggles because we understand this kind of cycle that people do in general. I get a long-winded answer. Sorry.
No, all of that, I think it addresses it perfectly. And that river of misery has grabbed me multiple times, as I'm sure it has you and every writer out there. And figuring a way over it, through it, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
is, I think, one of the most important lessons that we can help writers with.
Mm-hmm.
And all of that leads perfectly into my next question, which is about art. Capital A art.
Yes.
Because with screenwriting, it's funny because the prose stuff that I write in the comics, I don't see the same sort of advice or the way it's framed, I guess, as I do with screenwriting, where screenwriting has this almost rigid structure that you'll see people talking about. And I think it's hard to kind of avoid being so prescriptive with how we talk about screenwriting. So I want to talk about the way we as readers who are also writers and vice versa balance the art of it all with the just like pragmatic craft aspect of it. And if there is any differentiation, like if we have to teach ourselves to be like, you know what, the pragmatic craft of this is artistic.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a way that you approach that as a writer who also reads and vice versa?
Yeah. Because I mean, it is true. I think maybe because of my experience as a professional dancer before, like being a ballerina, before coming into reading, and the same is true. I have a lot of musicians in my life, or basketball players or anything. I just heard a story today about how Larry Bird would come in before a game and he would walk the entire floor just dribbling so that he could find all the dead spots in the floor so that he
Oh,
would know
wow.
when someone else has the ball, oh, it's not going to bounce quite as high right there. Like he would know going in, right? That's a fundamental from an amazing, one of a kind player, right?
One of the
And the
best. Yeah.
same is true with, a ballet dancer that, I mean, I'd go I never really liked ballet or going to class, but I wanted to get a job. So I knew that if I wanted to work in musical theater, or I wanted to do the touring show, or I wanted to dance at Disney World, or do all of that, then I needed to do my daily ballet, as boring as that was to me at the time. So that's, to me, is like, it is, every art, I think, has that pragmatic thing. I think, if maybe someone doesn't do a different medium, it doesn't look that way when you watch it, which is the key, right? When you see a
Right.
ballerina, although I think in ballet, maybe it's just because I've been there, ballet, I can see, just kind of like a professional athlete, you can see the training, right? You can see how someone has
Oh yeah.
train to get there. Whereas people, everyone loves movies, so everyone thinks that they know what would make a movie. They don't see the work that can go, the writing every day that it takes, that kind of thing, and the structure and all that pragmatic work that is underneath it all. But just like a musician that practices chords, we need to be able to really understand what structure is and really understand where things go, so that we have that foundation. And if you do that, then you can, and again, this always, all of it comes back to mindset. If you can do that pragmatic work, then you can relax and play on top. And you can just, your structures, that you'll start to feel it intuitively the more that you write. And the more you just write, and read, the more you do that, the more, as you're writing, you'll just intuitively sense when it's time to make a shift, or have a new character come in, or all the different things that will make it better. You'll naturally feel them because you've done that groundwork. I think it's like anything, you do the work and then you can play on top.
Well, I think also the thing you said, and I mean, I read a lot of scripts for the film festival, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the ones that leapt out at me, I knew pretty early on in it
Mm-hmm.
that it was going to be exceptional
Mm-hmm.
based on stage direction. It was a stage play. I interviewed the
Nice.
writer's name's Drew Larimore,
Love it.
and his play went on to be a semifinalist at the film festival this year. So, but I knew, seeing certain things early on, that this person understood the format.
Mm-hmm.
They understood how to tell a story within the format of a stage play, and I think that was almost another way that sort of eased the burden I had, which
Mm-hmm.
is a weird way to put it,
No.
as a reader, because I was like, okay, you get it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm in and I'm going along.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Love it.
is there a way to teach? Is it just repetition?
Well, I think, I mean, you kind of hit it on the head when you recognize the format. For the writers out there, that the thing you can control, and this is when we were talking about snaking your pages, which is kind of my fun term for people that have their screenplay is too long, so they make the font smaller, or would it be that way, so that they're trying to make it seem as though it's not quite so long, or they're making the
Right.
margins wider, smaller, to make their screenplay longer or shorter, because they know it needs to be a certain length in order to enter in contest or whatever. And I call that snaking your pages, because it's like, if you don't know, that's one thing. And usually you can tell if someone doesn't know, because everything else will be a mess as well. But when everything's fine except for that, then to me, there's a little bit of integrity going on there. Like, it's like, no. You need to, like, follow the thing. But that's something you can control as a writer,
Yeah.
is all of those formatting things. It's like, do a spell check, or not even just a spell check, because there's there and there, or whatever. Like, you want to make sure that things are accurate, because at least then the reader is immediately, like what you just described. You're like, okay, they get it now. You're not looking at that anymore. Suddenly that's off the table now. And now you're only looking for the playing on top that we just talked about. So as a
Yeah.
writer, the more you can be aware and learn, there's so many resources out there. It's just insane. There's so much we can learn. And the more you can learn, so that that's off the table, the more then you're drawing the reader into your world, and you're able to play with them, and it's a delight. And as a reader, the more that we can help writers. So when you do write a coverage, if you let that playwright know that right away you were drawn in, because they did the homework, they're doing the legwork ahead of time. And so as a reader, when you're coming in and you're reading a script, if even if there's things that don't work about it, you're able to at least start from an elevated place. And that's what we're kind of looking for right out the gate. Even though one of the things I love about Austin Film Festival is that they're so open to young or new writers that are
Mm-hmm.
coming in that have never written. And by young, I mean, you just haven't written yet. Anyone can write a screenplay, everybody, no matter how old you are at all.
Yep.
But they can, they can, they're allowing they're not so worried about the kind of typos and that kind of thing, which is great, because I think it helps that border, they can enter a little bit easier. But on the flip side of that, that's where you can really like the one thing you can really control. And then that way they're not looking at your snaking the pages. They're looking at, the depth of your story. And it's all about story. And if we can get to that story more. So I do think it's like anything, repetition for sure, like you said,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, I bought a book called Hollywood Standard. I'm sure you've heard of it. Just about like how to format your pages, like what you're gonna capitalize, what you're not gonna capitalize, and
And it's important.
yeah,
It sounds
and it
silly, but
is.
it is. If you don't learn the capitalization thing, that's a really good example because that's such an inside thing. If you don't know that and you're capitalizing your character every time we see them, then it's like we think there's a new character because you only
Yeah.
capitalize them the first time, right? So every time you see that, yeah, especially as a reader, I've read 11,000, but I would easily read, there's easily 30 scripts a week. So it would be like there's some days where I'm cranking through screenplays and those kind of formatting things would just throw me out and be like, why are there 300 characters? And I'd be like, oh no, it's because it's the same character used twice. Yeah. So that kind of stuff, like there's so many entries out there that the more that you can, single yourself out by that.
Oh yeah, and although we're taught at the film festival, don't penalize for typos,
Yeah.
don't penalize for formatting. Like you're really reading for the story. There's also a part of your brain where it's like, okay, I know this person is coming from
Yeah.
either outside or not someone who's used to writing
Yeah.
a screenplay, and usually that kind of goes hand in hand
Mhm.
with their struggling
Mhm.
to tell a story
Mhm.
coherently within the format.
It takes it because it's all like anything. If you're a long run jumper or you're a basketball player or whatever, even if you have natural raw talent, it's not until you know the fundamentals that you're really going to soar. And that's the beauty of Austin Film Festival is they're trying to pull in and find people that have stories to tell that may not know how to tell them exactly. And so our job as a reader, I think, is to help champion that writer. And the more
Yeah.
that we can like get them into a place where they can learn the things that then will get their screenplay forward, and that's what Austin's all about. They're trying to do that, and I think we're part of that. We're a big part of that. So and Hollywood Gatekeepers too, the way that I train our readers is really, you are there to, it is not about you ever. I don't even allow our readers to say like me or I think or whatever. It's like, nope, we should never picture a reader writing a coverage when you read a coverage, just like I don't think you should ever picture the writer when you're reading a screenplay. You should only
Yep.
be picturing in your head the people in the story. You should never think about that, who that writer is. And sometimes it's hard to do that.
Oh yeah, that's one of my favorite things with the film festival is that they don't give you a name.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's anonymous. It's just it's a script. You don't know who wrote it.
Well, I want to kind of, one of the things I'd like to start doing, I do like that in a coverage that we do. There's no reader. We don't know who that is, but I would like to be able to writers to start to be more engaged with their readers after the process. That's one of the
Oh,
things
me
that we
too.
are trying to do. And I'm bucking against a system that's been in place for a long time where we don't, no, readers don't get to meet anybody. And I'm trying to like slowly one little person go, no, wait, you should meet your readers. And when I was at the festival, I had some panels where I was able to roundtables, I was able to talk to writers. And when I started saying, maybe you could meet your reader, their face is like made me go, okay, yeah, this is something their face just lit up like, oh, to be able to have a conversation with that reader, like what a difference it would make, especially now in the world of AI and all of that.
Oh
The
yeah.
more human connection we can have, the more that a reader can give them their notes, but then say, let's have a quick call or whatever, so that writer can really feel like they were heard and understood. And if the reader didn't get across, didn't understand what their screenplay was about, why, what went on there, all of that, so much fun.
Oh yeah. That's why. So Drew Larimore script. I read it. I fell in love with it. Literally, I was pitching it to people at the film festival. Like, this is the best script that I read while I was reading. It's amazing. Here's the premise. And
So good.
I wrote a special note because I was like, this thing could win. So I wrote a special note. I sent it on. I did even more notes breaking down all of the things that I thought and why. And it made it to the semifinals, which is the only reason that I found out who wrote it, because his
Oh, right.
name was in the
Yeah.
program because it went to the semifinals. So that's when I was like, I have to talk to this person.
Yeah.
And luckily, he came on the show. And what ended up happening is that
Yeah.
he asked me questions. What did you think about this thing?
So
What did
good.
how did you view this
I'm sure
thing?
you were
And
just lit up.
it was
Yeah.
it was so much fun.
Yeah.
I already loved his script so much and it meant so much to me, but just the idea that I was having fun talking about it, and I know what it feels like when you're a writer and somebody's like asking you about the thing, and it's exciting. It's very, very exciting.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and it was so cute. I remember seeing you talking to another reader afterwards, and you had read the same script, and the way you two both just lit up and like, oh my gosh, you're just talking about the script that you had read, like that. I think that that's a beautiful thing, and the more we can do that, I think I mentioned it at the conference about a contest that I read for, where all of the finalists, once we had the top 10, the readers would all read the last top 10, and then we had a big pizza party and we would fight for the one we thought should win. And it was so much fun because
Yeah.
then we got really behind why, which one, what it should mean and all of that, and it got really rowdy and it was really, really fun. And I just think the more that we can have those kind of conversations and the more that we can like uplift each other in that way, it just makes it so much better, right?
Oh yeah. And any chance to take away any little bit of the feeling of being lonely
Yeah.
as you're right, like any chance to take that away. And I'm a huge fan of community anyway, and just building community around the things that we love.
Hmm.
And I think that's a great idea.
For sure.
Earlier, you mentioned co-writing,
Hmm.
and that's something I haven't got to talk to a ton of people about. I've talked a little bit about it, but I want to talk about co-writing.
Hmm.
You co-wrote a movie called "You Can't Run Forever"
Hmm.
with Michelle Schumacher, who also directed it.
Hmm.
I want to talk about how you co-write
Yeah.
and the process. Like that's the very first step. How do you co-write a screenplay?
Hmm. Well, it's different depending on who you're co-writing it with.
Yeah,
I have one writing partner that I've written like four or five screenplays with. We have a very over the years we've developed our process where he just says you write like I write the opening. Now we've determined that and then he's like, I'll take this scene, you take that scene. His name is Doug Shaner. He's also one of the founders of Hollywood Gatekeepers. And so and that's and then I couldn't even tell you what he wrote and I wrote by the end. Like it gets a jumbled mess. We don't typically use an outline. We just it's a very interesting, free formed kind of way of writing for two people. And then whenever we butt heads about something, kind of the rule in general is who's ever most passionate about it wins. So if one person's like, all right, but because typically one person really feels strongly it needs to be a certain way. And so, it's interesting with just kind of the friendship that we have and the long-term thing that we've done and kind of which characters we've realized one person can write better than another, that kind of thing. So
yeah,
it helps that we've done it for so long. And when I first started writing with him, I was like, this is so great. I'm going to write with more people. And then I started writing with other people and it was just terrible. And so I was like, oh, is it? But then Michelle and I wrote, and wow, we have so much fun together. It's one, she's probably the smartest person I know. Like she's wickedly smart, and she's a director. Like she knows when we are going to, she's going to direct whatever we're writing. So, and we're very far more systematic. We get a very detailed outline first. So kind of the opposite of how I do it with him. And so also because she's the director, she has the final say, right? And that's kind of how I started. This is me helping. Well, I don't want to put it like me helping you with your story. It can be that depending on what the story is that we're writing. And we've been kind of playing with a lot of different kinds of stories. But if she came with the story of hers, I'm kind of feel like, and I've been trained so well with that as a reader of helping someone with their story. But we come up with kind of a really detailed outline, and then she's so incredibly visual and is very, very meticulous about making sure that the vision is on the page. So like for example, if I might say, she's racked with anxiety, that's a thing that I'm sort of giving it to the actor to determine like how they're going to play that. She's ripping her fingernails off to the shred, to the quick, right? So
yeah.
she's giving an actual visual thing for the actor to do. Like she's very meticulous in that way, and I've learned so much from her as a writer as I kind of watch her do that. And so it's just an absolute joy. We've also been friends for a very long time, so that helps too. But it is interesting when we sit down to write, and then after we're done writing, we go we go play and do things. But whatever. But but and actually, Doug, I met, he hired me as a reader, and then I helped him on a project for over a year, and we worked on that project really hard. And I just kept, he hired me to do page one, and then that turned into kind of helping him develop that. And it was a whole process. It was an amazing story. And so we discovered we just worked really well together. So then we started writing together. So being a reader, and now I'm also doing an animated feature, which came from working with Adam Watts, who is the person who composed all of High School Musical and Camp Rock. And then he also did all of Demi Lovato and Miley Cyrus. He launched their careers by writing all the music for their television shows, Hannah Montana, and then whatever Demi show was. And so he wrote a animated rock opera, and he had hired me years ago to help him write a screenplay. He didn't know how to write a screenplay, so I helped him as a reader write his first screenplay. And then years later, he was like, I know who I want to write this. And so now I'm writing that, and now we're producing it together. And so all of this work kind of came from my ability as a reader that just launched into working on these projects. It's really fun.
So I think the thread there for me is, it actually, I think, confronts a thing that people talk about all the time with Hollywood, which is you have to know someone. And I think that's such a backwards way of looking at it, because saying it that way or phrasing it that way is really, I feel like it's dirtying the thing that's actually happening, which is meeting people you like.
Yeah.
And
doing stuff.
Talking to people, like, and like knowing someone, just being like,
yeah,
oh yeah, I became friends with this person.
Yeah.
And then we talked, and it wasn't a thing where it was like I knew this person and then I got all these opportunities. It was like, oh no, I got to know someone
through the opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah. So with co-writing, do you have, and here I mean you specifically, do you think you have to be friends with someone for that process to work in a way?
No, not at all. I mean,
No.
I mean, I am friends with Michelle. That is to me, that's a unicorn in terms of like how close we are. It's really amazing. And then Adam, I didn't know. I mean, he hired me through someone that knew I did that and recommended me. So I didn't know him at all when we first started working together. Now he's one of my best friends, but I didn't know him at all. Same with Doug. Doug hired me. Doug met me at a conference and literally hired me. One of the things that I realized when I was being a reader, and I came back to conferences and started talking about, same conference where I learned about being a reader, I came back to talk about being a reader. And so, because no one was really talking about being a reader, they were all talking about getting your script past a reader. I'm like, nobody's talking about the reader life. Like, no one talks about that. And then I started taking pitches because I was reading for so many different companies. I could see like, wait a minute, I can help these writers and take them back to different companies. And so, because I also believe that being a reader is kind of like being a casting director, that it's not just about the script, it's about who the script is right for. And when you are a writer and you're pitching your script out there, you want to be pitching it to the best person that's right for that screenplay, not just to anyone who will listen. And that whole kind of joke about screenwriters that run around trying to get anyone to read their screenplay, like that's kind of in the same realm as you have to know someone. I mean, it's ridiculous that you have to know someone. Look at the credits of the film. You think, how many people are on that film? Every movie you watch, all those people knew someone before. No, that's how you get to know someone. And we had Paul Haggis, who's the only person to win back-to-back Oscars for Crash and $1 Million Baby. He came into our programs and he was talking about how he was a Canadian painting houses with his dad. And his dad was like, you suck at this painting houses thing. You need to go to Hollywood and write screenplays. It's such a great story. What a great parent, first of all. So
that is good. Yeah.
Gave him some money and went, go get your dream. And so he didn't know anyone. Like, he came and he just like started meeting people. It's just that's the fun part in a way. So because I've worked on so many projects as a reader and then in development, and so I've gotten to know people. And when I was doing all that pitching and taking all these pitches and kind of trying to introduce people and that kind of thing, one of the things, I mean, I know it's called Hollywood Gatekeepers, but our goal is to kick the gate in, not to shut people out. And so it's like, I'm trying to find ways. That's why we do Hollywood Gatekeepers. I bring these guests in. So now they all know where to find a reader if they need to, right? It's like, I'm trying to like do what I can to connect people as opposed to, let them all flounder. And you will find those people that you connect with that then become your close friends, or maybe not. I've had many people that I've worked with for years that I wouldn't, we don't really hang out together, but we certainly work on projects together. So it's just all depends. I mean, I do love when I when I become friends with someone. That's, Adam
Sure.
and I joke about that. Actually, he's always like, oh, I'm one of those people that's terrible, and I like to mesh my personal life with my business life because it's awful. He goes, I'm really terrible. I can't never have a boundary. But he said that right out the gate. And so, and he cracks me up with that stuff because because he has such a huge heart, right? So he can't help it.
Yeah.
But it is, there's sometimes when you do need that kind of professional, no, I'm just working with you on this now, and then I'm going to go home to my peeps or whatever. It's all just whatever you want it to be, whatever you're comfortable
Yeah.
with. It makes zero difference, in my opinion.
Do you, and this is a question I ask, not all the time, but a lot of writers, do you write every single day?
I write every single day, maybe not screenplays every single day. I'm a big,
Yeah.
because I'm also, into self-development, I journal, I would say like 99% of days. Yeah, I journal I always write something, whether it's a journal piece or, I write a lot of things for Hollywood Gatekeepers because I'm training people all the time. So I'm always trying to think about what would be the fun thing to train them with. So I'm constantly coming up with materials for that. What would be a fun topic we could talk about, doing a podcast, coming up with that. So I'm always creating. This has been one of the most creative times of my life as running Hollywood Gatekeepers because I'm doing so much. And then also have 2 projects in the work with one with Michelle and one with Adam. So I'm working on those as well. So always doing something.
So with those projects, or any project really, not just those specifically, and this is something I just talked about on the last episode, rewriting. Rewriting being a skill that is different than writing. Talk to me about learning the skill of rewriting and how you, as a screenwriter, found your way into rewriting where you felt comfortable, or do you feel comfortable
It
rewriting?
goes, it's so interesting you say that. And playwriting too is an interesting thing with rewriting, because when you can do a play and you get it up on its feet in rehearsal, and you have this sort of luxury of time that you don't have. You have it, but it's different when you're writing screenplays. And it's so much, it can be collaborative in that you don't usually get a lot of rehearsal time on a set, so sometimes you do, but often not. And so that as a playwright is just so invaluable to be able, I highly recommend anyone, no matter what you're doing, if you have a screenplay, that you do a live read at some point, even if it's just you and your friends in the living room, the live read. But the more professional you can make it, the better. The more better actors you can get, the better, because they will, not only will you get to hear it, which will blow your mind, but they'll do things with it you never even thought of. And then they can also say, hey, this feels weird. Sometimes they'll even stop and be like, that's not my line, because they'll intuitively know. And if it is, you have it assigned to them, it's like, oops. And if you don't, then it's like, if they just feel like, sometimes it's an actual mistake, but usually it's because someone like attributed a line to someone that doesn't really fit the character. And so an actor will immediately rebel against something that doesn't feel right. And so that's a huge part of rewriting to me, is like hearing it out loud with people saying the lines, even if you just do with friends on Zoom. But I think being a reader has really helped the rewriting process in terms of being able to spot things and being able to track, actually, so that when you do make a change, especially in You Can't Run Forever, we made some changes and it was kind of complicated, some of the things that had to happen. One, we also shot wildly out of order. So being able to make sure that, things were tracking was really important. So if she loses something, halfway through, and then we get to the end, she still has it, whatever, make sure that it's tracked in the screenplay. If you make a change, and I've seen this countless times where a character will suddenly appear or disappear, then you're like, what happened? And then sometimes you can tell, but usually it's that they did a rewrite and forgot that person, they hadn't followed through. And that's, tracking is really, really important. And I read a screenplay that I actually, from a producer that I now have in my course, so that people can see the process, because, well, he gave it to me in a 3-ring binder. So right out the gate, I'm like, okay, you've never submitted your screenplay.
Nope. Don't do that.
He handed it to me and I go, well, I can tell you right now, it's too long. I didn't even open the binder. And he was like, because he was a friend and he had never, like, he was so excited that when he learned that I did this, that I was a reader. I had known him for years in a different context. I also volunteer in nonprofits, and he was working at nonprofits. He had no idea this was my life. And so I just kind of was laughing, like, it's too long. And he was like, well, you haven't even read it yet. And then so I read it and I go, okay, here's what I think happened. I think you hired someone to write the first part. They crapped out on you at the midpoint, by the way. And then you wrote the rest. And he was like, how did you know that? And it was I could just tell the person that he hired had some experience, because it's shifted halfway through from
Yep.
being kind of a screenplay to being a novel, basically, like completely shifted. And it was it's a beautiful teaching tool because it's
Yeah.
not unusual to see that, right? So you'll start to be able to see the more you read. That's an extreme example of a rewriting thing, but you'll start to see where things are pretty obviously that they need to be reread. And then that's where your readers come in, is being able to have those readers. I would have, as a writer, have a few different people that you trust to give the screenplay to, so they can give you notes back before you just continue to tear your hair out trying to continue to rewrite. I think 3x5 cards are awesome, being able just to put them on free. Another exercise that I do is take all the names out of the dialogue and then read it and see if you can tell whose line it is. Things like that. There's lots of exercises you can do to see if your script is ringing true. But really, I think the live read is one of the main ones. And just also, it's all of it. Everything comes down to your mindset of being able to just relax about it, realizing that writing is rewriting, and walk away for a while once you get to a certain draft. And another thing that I learned in pitching that was so astounding to me, but just sort of normal now, it still kind of blows my mind though, is that I took hundreds, if not thousands, of pitches from people. And there were a few times where, well, actually, I tried to do it as much as I possibly could, which is true of most people. They want the screenplay to go through. But I'd be like, okay, well, let me see the script. We'll try it here. We'll try. Out of all of those people, like one person, I think maybe not one. There was one complete that they were in and they got it to me the next day. And then maybe about 5 more that I actually saw the script.
Yeah.
Everybody else was like, okay, yeah, I'll get it to you. Never heard from him again, or heard, I'm just going to do one more pass. And then a few months would go by. Okay, I'm going to do one more pass. And I'd just be like, and with anything, I'm always like, yeah, I'll help you. And then I go, you just let me know when. You just send me the thing. I put it back on them with anything.
Right.
Because if they don't reach back out to me with whatever they've got, then they need to have that drive in order to make it work. Because whatever you are as a writer, you're going to have to learn how to build those relationships, because when someone's going to do your movie, it's going to be years that you're going to work with them. So they're sure that you could do that. And even I had a producer that said, I need some more writers. And so she was willing to have this big meeting and meet writers. And so some of them were like teaching writing, and all these people that had been complaining about how they couldn't get their script out there. I'm like, here you go. Come on. I invited all these writers. This same thing happened. The only person that totally came through was Doug Shaner, the one that I ended up being a writing partner with. And that, at the time, we weren't writing partners. He came through with everything he had. He was like, this one's kind of half done. He was just so willing to be like, here you go. This is me. And this is how I write. And I'm in whatever you need. He was just,
I wonder how
really impressive.
I wonder how much of that is fear.
100%.
Think all of it?
100%. No, it is. Yeah. It's just a form of fear, a form of imposter syndrome, all kinds of things. And which is another reason why I'm a life coach, to kind of help people with that thing. Because even if your script isn't quite there, all those people that I'm the one more pass, that's just fear. I'm sorry. If it just needs another pass, then it's done. We're going to see your voice, whether the script has problems or not. So to hold on to it, and that kind of, some people would just be afraid to let it go. And many people that I would coach through the idea of I'm just going to write this one screenplay, maybe the sequel to that screenplay, and I have a pilot of that screenplay, and I'm going to write a book that's the same story.
Right.
Some people get all married to their one thing, and then when someone pays me, I'll write the next. And the number one question that producers will have when you're pitching to them is, what else do you have?
What else do you have?
That's going to be the number one question, because they want to know that they're dealing with a writer, not with someone who has one idea. Because there's there's just so much.
Yeah. That's such a hard thing to balance. I just talked to Jim Bernstein, who wrote Renaissance Man and Mighty Ducks 3, and he was talking about writing spec scripts. He's a big believer in spec scripts. I am too. I love spec scripts. And he was talking about someone who shows up with 19 scripts, and instead of writing, he was like, well, yeah, you wrote 19 first drafts. And what you got to do is shuffle that. He said, 19 drafts of the first thing.
Yeah.
What do you think?
So, so instead of having 19 scripts, you have 19 drafts of one script.
Or let's divide it down the middle and be like, you show up with 7 scripts,
I
8
think you show up
scripts.
with whatever the conversation was about, and you show up
Yeah.
with the best version of that you think you can bring, depending
Yeah.
on the time that you have. You don't put it off, though. If you have a draft and the meeting's next week, you do what you can to make that draft as best as it can be, but you don't put off the meeting. Like that's the thing that people do, is they go all or I'm actually, this just happened to me by someone who works a lot, and he texted me. We've worked on many things together, and he's an actor first, and he texted me and said, "Hey, I have a new screenplay. Would you take a look?" Which I don't typically do that, but we've worked a lot, and I was like, "Yeah, send it over." This
Sure.
now 3 weeks ago. So it's like, okay, I'm not going to follow up. I'm not going to beg for it. But whenever he's ready, he knows the door is open for now, unless right now I could do it. I don't know how my schedule might change, but whatever. But that's a super common thing of people, like, they get inspired in the moment, they make the
Yep.
move, and then they don't follow through. I think he'll eventually follow through. And we're friends, it doesn't really matter. But in general, if you don't know the person, for sure, do not move that. Take the opportunity. Even if you show up half baked, you want to take the opportunity and just be who
Right.
you are in that moment. So I think you show up with the thing that you have, but you have the whole library. You know that you have, if you have a one sheeter, you have something that you can hand someone, that these are my other log lines, or these are my other projects, or so they know that you've got that one thing, but you are just going and you have other things.
Right.
It provides, so it isn't either or. I think that you have 19 drafts of one or 19 screenplays. You want 19 screenplays that you feel comfortable that you can hand out at any time, because they're going to change regardless. So
Right.
you just want to get it to a point where someone can read it, basically.
See, in my head, that's all of those things sound like situations where somebody's like, "Hey, I have a screenplay. Do you want to read it?" And you're like, "Yeah." And then they're like, "Oh shit, she said yes." Oh my god.
Yeah, maybe I didn't even think of that. He was like, he thought I was going to say no.
What do I do? I can't give her this. What am oh my god.
I'm sure that was most, like, even if it's not true, which it probably
Right.
isn't. Yeah, even if it's not. So funny. And it is, I mean, I do read things where it happens all the time. Like when I was on set, I ended up like reading a few things. Like, it's like you start to meet people in the industry, whatever, you start to make those connections. And there's sometimes where I will read things, and I get lots of emails of people wanting me to read their script, or I'll be teaching a live free training, and in the chat, someone will say things like, I'm going to send you my script. It's like, wait, no. But it is like, that's why I'm trying to train so many good readers, so that those readers can
Right.
go out and help all those people with everything we're talking about. Yeah.
Well, and for me, reading, because I've obviously have been reading screenplays for as long as I knew what the thing was, but the big change for me was reading unproduced
Yeah.
screenplays and reading unproduced work,
Yes.
and the differences between how that affected me as a writer,
Yes.
I was shocked by.
So does it make you feel more inclined to write or less?
More.
Good. Because some people
Absolutely
get
more.
intimidated when they, yeah, for me too. Me too.
Oh yeah, I reading for the film festival is hands down like probably the best thing I've ever done for my creative life,
Yep.
undoubtedly.
Absolutely. I highly recommend it to people to get involved. And plus, just the art of getting involved, just the power of showing up too is huge. People that you meet, look, we met. Like, I mean, who knows
Right.
who knows what we have in our future together? Maybe, who knows?
Well,
Like, it just,
well,
like,
like
it's all beautiful things, right?
literally, I told my wife when I got back home, I was like, it really feels like there's going to be a before and after
Mm.
I went to the film
Oh, for
festival.
sure.
Like that I now have entered this weird world where it's after I went there and it just was the coolest thing that I could have done. And the idea of being connected to all those other people who were passionate about the thing that I was passionate about
Yeah,
is so much
so
fun.
much fun. Yeah, it is. You find your peeps.
What do you suggest for writers who are like, I feel like I'm on the precipice of like achieving not success, but like the next step in my life as a writer? What's the big thing for them that you would say, all right, if you feel like you're like pushing right up against the wall, like you're ready to break through something, what should they do?
They should set the most impossible goal they can think of. What's the big big dream? What's the big thing? Like, what is the big impossible thing that you want? What do you want? People, we don't ask each other in that. What do you actually want? What do you want
Yeah.
from this? Is it that you want so and so to star in it? Do you want to just finish a screenplay? Everybody, their next big thing for one person could be something that seems sort of small to someone else, but it could be that, do you want to just find an idea and it's just you're in the early stages, or do you have 10 screenplays and you're just so frustrated because you can't get them out there? Like, what do you want from this? What are you going for? Because when we reach for the big thing, and the thing is your brain doesn't know, like, we don't know how we're going to get to the next big thing. We don't know how to
Right.
solve for that. And that's okay, to be okay with that you don't know. Because what people will be like, they always judge what they're able to do by what they've already done. And if you judge by what you've already done, you're never going to do anything new. So it's like, you have to be able to live with being able to reach for something that's you've never reached for before. And so it can be scary as heck. I had a really lovely moment with the young lady that it was her first film. She just turned 18 with You Can't Run Forever, and we went to Lionsgate, held a premiere, and she came into my classes, and I was interviewing her, and I said, "How did you feel at the premiere?" Because it was very exciting, of course. And she said, "Honestly, I sat in the car before going in, and I thought I was going to throw up." And I was like, "Me too."
Same.
We both, I had my brother with me, and he had to talk me off the ledge. So it's like, you don't know what that, even though I was super excited, it was all good, right? But it's
Sure.
still like, you don't know what that thing is. And so if you reach for the big things, you're going to at least move forward further than you would have if you didn't reach for the bigger thing, right? So to have it be, there's no, what could you do if you could not fail? If I said to you, "Look, I've just went to the future, I'm back now," you don't fail, you get that thing. Then what would you do? And you solve for that. And if the first thing that you do doesn't move you forward, you do something else. And if that doesn't move you forward, you do something else. And you just keep trying the things. Eventually, something's going to lead to something that's going to lead to something. So that's, no matter where you are, reach for the bigger thing, and that will get you forward. And be prepared to do that, because it's going to freak your brain out. And your brain's going to be like, you know what? It's so much more comfortable on the couch watching Netflix. Just stop it. Please stop. And you just know that that's going to be part of it, and that that's okay. And you just keep moving forward.
Well, I 100% co-sign all of that.
Does that get your
100%.
Austin seal of approval?
I appreciate you stopping by so much. This is awesome. Thank you for chatting with me.
You're always fun to chat with.
That was my chat with Carolyn J. Carpenter. And if you made it this far, listen, do not be afraid to say exactly what you want, to write down what you want, to think about the thing you're actually setting out to accomplish. I did this while I was at Austin Film Festival at a specific panel, and it was insanely helpful. And also, it's weird to think of it as brave, because I didn't ever really sit down and be like, okay, yes, I want this, I want this, I want this. Because it felt sort of wrong, or like I was somehow using the process in a way that I shouldn't have. Anyway, it's great advice from Carolyn. I wholly believe that you should do it. So go do that. Go to HollywoodGatekeepers.com to check out more about what they do and how you could submit your stuff to get it read or be a reader. So go check that out. Check out You Can't Run Forever, which she co-wrote with director Michelle Schumacher and starring J.K. Simmons. It's out now. And let me know what you thought about the show. Go to austinrwilson.com. There's a contact form there. You can also contact me through mosshartbooks.com or through mosshartbooks on Instagram. I've got another interview that I'm recording on Wednesday, which is 2 days from now. So keep your eyes open for that one. It's going to be the last one I do this year. Should be out before New Year's. I'm excited about it as well. But this chat with Carolyn really, again, I always love it when I do a chat and I have all of this energy to get back to the page. And it absolutely happened again. So I can't wait to get back to the keyboard. I can't wait for you to get back to the keyboard or the page or however you're putting words down. Let me know. Can't wait to talk to you again. Thanks.